Okay, so I want to share with you the epic poem Hero and Leander, written by Christopher Marlowe. But for some context, if you don't know who Christopher Marlowe is, Christopher Marlowe was a contemporary of William Shakespeare. He was actually considered one of his rivals. Christopher Marlowe was known for plays involving dazzling characters, exotic settings, and controversial subjects. He possibly could have surpassed Shakespeare in popularity and greatness, notoriety, except for the fact that he was suddenly killed at the age of 29 in a bar fight. Um, so, Christopher Marlowe was the son of a shoemaker, did not start off very prominent. He was sent to college to study to be a priest. And while he was there, he proved to be more interested in literature than the Bible. While he was in college, he composed this poem, Hero and Leander, but it was unfinished. And so, what you'll see in this story, as it does kind of end abruptly, and it doesn't quite end the way it does in the original Roman myth. So, Hero and Leander is based on a Roman myth, but the ending is almost fitting uh, in some version of this story, I guess would be one way to say it. What I find most fascinating about Christopher Marlowe is that he was enlisted to serve as a spy on behalf of Queen Elizabeth, infiltrating the Catholic Church. If you'll remember, this is during the time of the Reformation. So, Elizabeth I, her father, is the one who started the Church of England so that he could get his divorce from his wife. And then, after he died, the throne went very shortly to his son, who died within weeks, if I remember correctly, and then to Lady Jane for just a few days, and then to his daughter, Mary, Queen of Spain, who brought the Catholic Church back. Whole other story there. She's the one that was known as Bloody Mary. And then the throne goes back to Elizabeth, who brings back the Church of England. So lots of back and forth there, lots of controversy in the church. And so Queen Elizabeth has these spies infiltrating the Catholic Church to see if any of them would be considered, if the acts of the Catholic Church would be considered treasonous. Whole other conversation there. All of that to say, Christopher Marlowe, famous poet, famous playwright, also working as a spy for the Queen, infiltrating the Catholic Church. And so when he's 29 years old, he is charged with blasphemy. And while awaiting hearing, he is drinking in an ale house, in an ale house, and gets into a fight with three men, also government spies. Christopher Marlowe raises a dagger to stab one of these men, and that man, in warding off the blow, manages to turn the knife that Marlowe is holding back on Christopher Marlowe, and it stabs Christopher Marlowe in the eye. And it specifically says in the historical record, it pierced his eye in such a sort that his brains coming out at the dagger's point, he shortly after died. So that's just fascinating. I do want to give a little bit of kind of like a trigger warning to this story. It is written in the 1500s, and so it does not reflect modern sentiments regarding gender and equal rights. And there's a trigger warning for part 3 of these videos that has the last part of the story, which does involve assault, and it does involve someone bringing about their own death. So I feel like it's only appropriate to warn about those things before you get into the story. So, Hero and Leander. On Hell's Point, guilty of true love's blood, in view and opposite two cities stood, sea borders disjoined by Neptune's might. Sea borders disjoined by Neptune's might. In other words, these two cities are separated by a gulf of water. The one Abydos, the other Sestos height. As Sestos, Hero dwelt, Hero the fair, whom young Apollo courted for her hair, and offered as a dower his burning throne, where she should sit for men to gaze upon. The outside of her garments were of lawn, the lining purple silk with gilt stars drawn, her wide sleeves green and bordered with a grove, where Venus in her naked glory strove to please the careless and disdainful eyes of a proud Adonis that before her lies. Her kirtle, or her gown, blue, whereon was many a stain made with the blood of wretched lovers slain. So there's blood on her dress for people who have died fighting for her. Upon her head she wore a myrtle wreath, from whence her veil reached to the ground beneath. Her veil was artificial flowers and leaves, whose workmanship both man and beast deceives. Many would praise the sweet smell as it passed, when 'twas the odor which from her breath forth cast. And there for honey bees have fought in vain, and beat from thence have lighted there again. Okay, so her breath is so sweet that bees fight for her. Let's see. So because it's just so ridiculous. I can't even get it out of my mouth. And there for honey, bees have fought in vain, and beat from thence have lighted there again. So bees think that there's honey in her breath because it smells so good. About her neck hung chains of pebble stone, which, lightened by her neck like diamonds shone. She wore no gloves, for neither sun nor wind would burn or parch her hands, but to her mind or warm or cool them, for they took delight to play upon those hands, they were so white. She didn't have to wear gloves because neither the sun nor the wind were going to offend or parch or burn her hands. Buskins of shells all silvered used she, and branched with blushing coral to the knee, where sparrows perched of hollow pearl and gold, such as the world would wonder to behold. Those with sweet water oft her handmaid fills, which as she went up chirruped through the bills. Some say for her fairest Cupid pined, and looking in her face was struck him blind. But this is true, so like was one the other, as he imagined Hero was his mother. So she's so beautiful that even Cupid mistakes her for his mother. And oftentimes into her bosom flew, and about her naked neck his bare arms threw, and laid his childish head upon her breast, and with so panting rocked there took his rest. So lovely fair was Hero, Venus's nun, as nature wept, thinking she was undone, because she took more from her than she left, and of such wondrous beauty her bereft. Therefore in sign her treasure suffered rack, since Hero's time hath half the world been black. So the world is not as beautiful because Hero was a nun and chose not to procreate. And so she's a nun for Venus, but in doing so has robbed the world of her beauty. Now we're going to shift to Leander. Amorous Leander, beautiful and young, whose tragedy divine Musaeus sung, dwelt at Abydos, since him dwelt there none for whom succeeding times make a greater moan. His dangling tresses that were never shorn, had they been cut and unto Colchis born, would have allured the venturous youth of Greece to hazard more than for the golden fleece. So Leander's hair was so beautiful that if it had been cut, it would have been fought over like the golden fleece. Fair Cynthia, who is the goddess of the moon, fair Cynthia wished his arms might be her sphere. Grief makes her pale because she moves not there. His body was straight as Circe's wand. Jove might have sipped out nectar from his hand. Circe was the goddess in the Odyssey that turned Odysseus' men into pigs, and Jove is the Roman version of Zeus. Even as delicious meat is to the taste, so was his neck in touching, and surpassed the white of Pelops' shoulder. Pelop was fed to the gods, but only his shoulder was eaten, and then they restored his shoulder with ivory. I could tell you how smooth his breast was, and how white his belly, and whose immortal fingers did imprint that heavenly path, with many a curious dint that runs along his back. But my rude pen can hardly blazon forth the loves of men, much less of powerful gods. Let it suffice that my slack muse sings of Leander's eyes, those orient cheeks and lips exceeding his that leapt into the water for a kiss of his own shadow, and despising many, died ere he could enjoy the love of any. So we talk about the beauty of Hero's breath and of Hero's clothes and of her shoes. And then when we get to Leander, it describes the beauty of his body, that it must have been crafted by the gods. Had wild Hippolytus Leander seen, enamored of his beauty had he been, his presence made the rudest peasant melt, that in the vast uplandish country dwelt. The barbarous Thracian soldier, moved with naught, was moved with him, and for his favor fought. Some swore he was a maid in man's attire, for in his looks were all that men desire. He was so pretty that many people thought he was a woman. A pleasant smiling cheek, a speaking eye, a brow for love to banquet royally, and such as knew he was a man would say, Leander, thou art made for amorous play. Why art thou not in love, and loved of all? Though thou be fair, not yet be not thine own thrall. How is it that you are not in a relationship? How is it that you don't have a lover if you're so beautiful? The men of wealthy Sestos every year, for his sake whom their goddess held so dear, rose-cheeked Adonis, kept a solemn feast. So there's a feast every year for Adonis, and held by the temple of Venus. Thither resorted many a wandering guest to meet their loves, such as had none at all. Came lovers home from the great festival, for every street, like to a firmament, glistered with breathing stars, who, where they went, frighted the melancholy earth, which deemed eternal heaven to burn. For so it seemed as if another Phaeton had got the guidance of the sun's rich chariot. Phaeton was Apollo's son. He stole his father's chariot and drove it too close to the sun. But far above the loveliest hero shined, and stole away the enchanted gazer's mind. For like sea nymphs in vaigling harmony, so was her beauty to the standers by. Nor that night wandering pale and watery star, when yawning dragons draw her thrilling car from Latmus's mount up to the gloomy sky, where crowned in blazing light and majesty she proudly sits. More overrules the flood than she the hearts of those that near her stood, even as, when gaudy nymphs pursue that chaste, wretched Ixion's shaggy-footed race, incensed with savage heat, gallop amain from steep pine-bearing mountains to the plain. So ran the people forth to gaze upon her, and all that viewed her were enamored on her. And as in fury of a dreadful fight, their fellows being slain or put to fight, poor soldiers stand with fear of death and shrunken, so at her presence all surprised had tooken, awaited the sentence of her scornful eyes. He whom she favors lives, the other dies. There might you see one sigh, another rage, and some, their violent passions to assuage, compile sharp satires. But alas, too late, for faithful love will never turn to hate. And many seeing great princes were denied, pined as they went, and thinking on her died. On this feast day, O cursed day and hour, went Hero through Cestus from her tower to Venus's temple, where unhappily, as after chanced, they did each other spy. So we've got a little bit of foreshadowing here, very similar to what Shakespeare is doing at the same time, telling the end of the story at the beginning of the story. So Venus leaves her tower and she goes to, Hero leaves her tower and goes to Venus's temple during this festival to offer her a sacrifice. So fair a church as this had Venus none. The walls were of discolored jasper stone, wherein the Proteus carved, and o'erhead a lively vine of green sea agate spread, where by one hand light-headed Bacchus hung, and with the other wine from grapes outwrung, of crystal shining fair the pavement was. The town of Sestos called it Venus's glass. There might you see the gods in sundry shapes committing heady riots, incest, rapes. For known for know that underneath this radiant flower was Danae's statue in a brazen tower. Jove stealing from his sister's bed to dally with Idalian Ganymede, and for his love Europa bellowing aloud, and tumbling with the rainbow in a cloud. Blood quaffing Mars, heaving the iron net, which limping Vulcan and his Cyclops set. Love kindling fire to burn such towns as Troy. Sylvanus weeping for the lovely boy that now is turned into a cypress tree, under whose shade the wood god loves to be. And in the midst a silver altar stood. Okay, so that was just kind of a little summary of some of the different Roman myths and stories of the gods and their naughty forays, I guess you would say, and relationships with each other and with men and with women and with anyone with whom they could have a relationship. And in the midst a silver altar stood, their hero sacrificing turtle's blood, veiled to the ground, veiling her eyelids close, and modestly they opened as she rose. So Hero goes out to Venus's temple, and she is doing a blood sacrifice of a turtle dove. Thence flew love's arrow with the golden head, and thus Leander was enamored. I mean, nothing as attractive as nun sacrificing a bird to her goddess. But this is the moment that Leander spies her and is enamored with her. Stone still he stood, and evermore he gazed, till with the fire that from his countenance blazed, relenting Hero's gentle heart was struck. Such force and virtue hath an amorous look. It lies not in our power to love or hate, for will in us is overruled by fate. When two are stripped long ere the course begin, we wish that one should lose, the other win. And one especially do we affect of two gold ingots, like in each respect. The reason no man knows, let it suffice. What we behold is censored by our eyes. We're both deliberate, the love is slight. Whoever loved that loved not at first sight. He kneeled, but unto her devoutly prayed. Chaste hero to herself thus softly said, were I the saint he worships, I would hear him. And as she spoke those words, came somewhat near him. Okay, so Leander bows down, and it's questionable whether it looks like he's worshiping Venus or whether he's worshiping Hero. He's worshiping Hero. And Hero mumbles to herself, God, I wish he was worshiping me. And she steps closer to him. He started up. She blushes as one ashamed, wherewith Leander much more was inflamed. He touched her hand. In touching it, she trembled. Love deeply grounded hardly is dissembled. These lovers parled or spoke by the touch of hands. True love is mute, and oft amazing stands. That's a beautiful line. Thus, while dumb signs their yielding hearts entangled, the air with sparks of living fire was spangled. And night, deep drenched in the misty Acheron, heaved up her head, and half the world upon breathed darkness forth. Dark night is Cupid's day. And now begins Leander to display love's holy fire with words, with sighs and tears, which like sweet music entered Hero's ears. And yet at every word she turned aside, and always cut him off as he replied. At last, like to a bold, sharp sophister, with cheerful hope, thus he accosted her. So he says, Fair creature, let me speak without offense. I would my rude words had the influence to lead thy thoughts, as thy fair looks do mine. Then shouldst thou be his prisoner who is thine. Be not unkind and fair misshapen stuff. Are we of behavior boisterous and rough? Oh, shun me not, but hear me ere you go. God knows I cannot force love as you do. My words shall be as spotless as my youth, full of simplicity and naked truth. This sacrifice, whose sweet perfume descending from Venus's altar to your footsteps bending, doth testify that you exceed her far, to whom you offer, and whose none you are. That's blasphemy. You are making a sacrifice to Venus, but you are more beautiful than she is. Why should you worship her? Her you surpass. As much as sparkling diamonds flaring glass, a diamond set in lead is worth remains. A heavenly nymph, beloved of human swains, receives no blemish, but oft times more grace, which makes me hope, although I am but base in respect of thee, divine and pure. Dutiful service may thy love procure, and I in duty will excel all other, as thou in beauty dost exceed love's mother. Nor heaven nor thou were made to gaze upon, as heaven preserves all things, so save thou one. A stately builded ship, well rigged and tall, the ocean maketh more majestic all. Why vowest thou then to live in Sestos here, who on love's seas more glorious wouldst appear? Like untuned golden strings all women are, which, long time lie untouched, will harshly jar. Vessels of brass off handle brightly shine. What difference between the richest mine and basest gold mold but use? For both not used are of like worth. Then treasure is abused when misers keep it. Being put to loan in time, it will return us 2 for 1. Rich robes themselves and others do adorn, neither themselves nor others if not worn. Okay, he's digging deep here. He's really laying it on thick with these pickup lines. Who builds a palace and rams up the gate? Shall see it ruinous and desolate? Ah, simple hero, learn thyself to cherish. Lone women like to empty houses perish. Less sins the poor rich man than starves himself in heaping up a mass of drossy pelf than such as you. His golden earth remains, which after his decease some other gains, but his fair gems, sweet in the loss alone, when you fleet hence, can be bequeathed to none, or, if it could, down from the enameled sky all heaven would come to claim this legacy, and with the intestine broils the world destroy, and quite confound nature's sweet harmony. Well, therefore, by the gods decreed it is, we human creatures should enjoy that bliss. One is no number. Maids are nothing then without the sweet society of men. I don't like that line. Wilt thou live single still? One shalt thou be, though never singling Hymen couple thee. That's the god of marriage. Wild savages that drink of running springs think water far excels all earthly things, but they that daily taste neat wine despise it. Virginity, albeit some highly prize it, compared with marriage, had you tried them both, differs as much as wine and water doth. Base bullion for the stamp's sake we allow, even so for men's impression do we you, which by which alone our reverend fathers say women receive perfection every way. This idol which you term virginity is neither essence subject to the eye, no, nor to any one exterior sense, nor hath it any place of residence, nor is it of earth or mold celestial or capable of any form at all. Of that which hath no being, do not boast. Things are not at all, are never lost. Men foolishly do call it virtuous. What virtue is it that is born with us? He's trying to talk her out of being a nun and then of being chaste. And he's basically saying, if you're born with virginity, how is it something that you can prize if you didn't earn it? Again, I don't really like that. Much less can honor be ascribed thereto. Honor is purchased by the deeds we do. Believe me, hero, honor is not won until some honorable deed be done. Seek you for chastity, immortal fame, and know that some have wronged Diana's name? Whose name is it, if she be false or not, so she be fair? But some vile tongues will blot. But you are fair. Ay me, so wondrous fair, so young, so gentle, and so debonair, as Greece will think it thus you live alone, some one or other keeps you as his own. You are so beautiful that if you continue to claim to be chaste and to be a nun, that all of Greece will believe that you're lying and that you are actually having an affair with somebody. Then, hero, hate me not, nor from me fly, to follow swiftly blasting infamy. Perhaps thy sacred priesthood makes thee loath. Tell me, to whom madest thou this heedless oath? All right, and so I'm going to stop there, and then we'll pick up in the second video with part 2.